So now we have a new victim to defeat. Lion Kamala Harris. Lion, L-Y-I-N apostrophe. The most incompetent and far-left vice president in American history. By the way, they did a poll. She was rated the worst vice president in history. I've never seen that poll before, but that's the poll. Together, we will win North Carolina in an epic landslide. We're way ahead in the polls. And we will take back that beautiful White House, and we will very simply make America great again. For 3.5 years, Lion Kamala Harris has been the ultra-liberal driving force behind every single Biden catastrophe. She is a radical left lunatic who will destroy our country. If she ever gets the chance to get into office, we're not going to let that happen. You know, I was supposed to be nice. They say something happened to me when I got shot. I became nice. And when you're dealing with these people, they're very dangerous people. When you're dealing with them, you can't be too nice. You really can't be. So if you don't mind, I'm not going to be nice. Is that okay? I'm not gonna. They want me to be nice. Thank you. Kamala Harris is the most liberal elected politician in American history. Did you know that? She's an ultra-liberal politician. She's absolutely terrible. She's, as you know, more liberal than Bernie Sanders. Can you believe it? She's rated far more liberal than Bernie Sanders. And she's now trying to get rid of her record, but she can't. She's going out and saying things that she doesn't believe in. If she ever got in, she'd destroy this country so fast. So she was the border czar, but she never went to the border, right? She was appointed by this horrible president, this horrible guy. How this guy got to be president in his basement. He stayed in his basement. And we did a lot better the second time than we did the first. How this guy got to be president, what they've done to this country in 3.5 years, and we're going to turn it around. But what they've done to our country is unthinkable. As border czar, Kamala threw open our borders and allowed 20 million illegal aliens to stampede into our country from all over the world.
This was vintage Trump, I think it's fair to say, David, don't you think? And he said specifically near the top, I'm not going to be nice anymore, as if he were ever nice.
Right.
But I'm not going to be nice, and he wasn't nice in this speech.
Well, it was really clear that what Donald Trump wanted to do in North Carolina tonight was to seize back the narrative. He understands that he has not been controlling the state of play for the last several days. You had the historic announcement from Joe Biden on Sunday that he was stepping down his endorsement of Harris coalescing the Democratic Party around her bid for the presidency. And that just was consuming all the oxygen. We know Donald Trump is not a big fan when other people are consuming the oxygen, because that means he's not dictating the state of play. So the goal here, and I think he just tipped his hand off the top, was to get that back and start laying out how he plans to run against Harris, certainly by looking at her record of policy proposals from back in the day, but also obviously, as he and his allies have indicated, her assignment by President Biden and this administration to be involved with some of the root causes of the immigration problem is clearly going to be something they keep going at her with front and center, given how important the immigration issue is. And I just thought when you said vintage Trump, I mean, he was actually referencing his lines from 2015. That's how it was vintage Trump, because he was like, remember, I used to say all the time about the cameras in the back of the room and they don't turn around and show the crowd. He was ticking through his crowd size. I mean, that is vintage Donald Trump, wanting to focus on things that are not pertinent necessarily to the run, but make him feel better and try and give this sense of don't be buying into that Harris momentum. We've got the crowds here. That was his mission tonight.
Two things that stood out to me. One, he's trying out his lines of attack on Harris, what the next 105 days or so are going to look like for his campaign. And as he's shifting to a new challenger, and he had everything prepared against President Biden, he kind of had it memorized in his sleep, essentially. This is new ground for him. And this is actually how Donald Trump typically goes through, what he's going to use against someone. He did it in the 2016 primary. He did it in the 2016 election in 2020. Is he'll try out lines at the crowd, at his rallies, and see what gets the most audience reaction and appeal and applause. And that is something that he'll adopt, and you'll start to see more of. He's been going crazy on social media against Harris ever since it was very clear that she is going to be the one challenging him this November. So expect to see more of that. Also, he's mispronouncing her name multiple times. That is something we've seen a lot of Republicans do who do know how to pronounce the vice president's name. The other thing that stood out to me, though, Wolf, was I don't think that we have seen Donald Trump connect his attempted assassination, which he was just recounting right there, to when people and Democrats and his political opponents often say he's a threat to democracy. Now, he himself has said that about President Biden, trying to turn the tables around on him. We've seen his allies connected to that. I think this is the first time that we have seen Donald Trump try to draw a line between that rhetoric and his attempted assassination, even though I should note the FBI itself has not done that.
Yeah, it's an important
And
point.
we should also just note that at the convention, he talked about how painful the attempted assassination event was, and that this would be the last time that he would tell this story because it was too painful to tell. So he walked through that whole top of the convention speech about the assassination attempt. And yet here he is at a rally revisiting the moment, not in the exact same storytelling of just what happened to him, but talking about what the crowd was doing and what the people behind him on stage were doing. So it doesn't seem that he's walling that off as something beyond the convention that he'll be talking about going
And
forward.
he referred to Kamala Harris as the most liberal vice president in American history, ultra liberal at one point, he said. And then when he said, I'm not going to be nice, he called her a radical left fanatic or lunatic. I'm trying to read my handwriting over here, but she's lying Kamala Harris. That's what he kept saying, lying Kamala Harris. Daniel Dale, our fact checker, is with us as well. You were listening very closely, as you always do, Daniel. What in Trump's remarks stood out to you?
So there were a bunch of subjective claims. I can't fact check claims that, she's liberal or extreme or so on, but there were a few claims that were flat out wrong. So he said she was the border czar, but she never went to the border. First of all, she did go to the border. She went to the border in Texas in mid-2021. Republicans before that had complained that she had not gone, but Trump has just continued to say she never went, even though she did go. And second, and more substantially, she was never actually border czar. She got an assignment from President Biden to help lead the diplomatic efforts related to the so-called root causes of migration in 3 countries, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. Now, some on the right get angry at fact checks like this because they say, look at all these media articles from back then in 2021 that said she was put in charge of the border or she was border czar. Well, those articles did not get it right, frankly, and her assignment was much more limited. Former President Trump also said that Harris let in 20 million illegal immigrants across the border. Aside from the fact that, again, she was not in charge of border security itself, that number is way too high. The number of so-called border encounters under Biden is about 10 million. Not all those people actually entered. Many of them were expelled. And even if you add so-called gotaways, people who evaded border authorities, maybe a couple million more, that doesn't get you close to 20 million. And then third of all, much less importantly, but classic Donald Trump, crowd size. He said Harris may have had a crowd of 1,000. I doubt it. Then he said maybe it was 2,000. At this rally in Wisconsin yesterday, she had a capacity crowd of more than 3,000. So he perpetually inflates his own and, I guess, deflates his opponent's crowds as well.